Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 26th of June, and joining me on this edition are assistant editor Steve Withers.
Everyone and their mums is packing round here.
News editor Mark Hodgkinson.
It's alright, Andy, it's just bolognese.
Once more with feeling, Mark.
Lost the will to live already. It's alright, Andy, it's just bolognese.
And audio reviewer Ed Selley.
Angel, don't go being a twat now.
Lovely. Accents and everything for the greater good. Right, let's move on. We've had summer. Did you all enjoy it?
No, it was far too bloody hot.
It was ridiculously hot, and I had no sleep for a week until at least last night when I had a nice little kip in the cinema. But otherwise, it's...
you managed to fall asleep, Christ. I had
multiple times.
I had the Ed effect last night because there was a kid and his dad sitting directly behind me, and every 2 minutes it was, "What's happening, Dad? Who's he, Dad? What's good?"
Dad saying?
And the dad was saying, "I don't fucking know. I'm watching the same shit you are."
It's like watching a movie with my wife.
I'm pretty sure
yeah, but the thing was, Mark, unlike your wife, the whole cinema was probably sitting thinking, "Don't get this. What's going on? What's happening?"
No one understood it.
And we'll come to that later on. Right, so it's summer weather. I probably escaped a little bit, but I did get burnt. I have got to say, I did get...
Yeah, but you burn under fluorescent light, so
which is
you're
true,
hiding to nothing.
That is true, but I had sun cream everywhere apart from on my ears, and my ears,
and you burnt your ears.
Burnt. Yeah, because I was wearing a baseball cap, and they were just in the line of sight. So I've now got flaking ears. It's a bit like what's his face in Goldmember. You know, he's coming a bit, and I'm taking flecks of skin off. So.
As long as you're not eating it, we're golden.
No, I'm not eating it yet. I'm still looking for Foxy Cleopatra though.
She's just dropped twins. I don't think she's going to be that in the mood at the moment.
I think that was the first time I'd ever heard of Beyonce Knowles when she was
yes, it was. It was the first time she was, I think, in anything was back then. I'm trying to remember the start of that film because I think it was just one cameo after that. Because Tom Cruise was playing Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow? Was she playing the female
Victoria Kensington.
Yeah, and then who else? Steven Spielberg was the director.
Yeah, Danny DeVito, I think.
Danny DeVito, that was brilliant. And Kevin Spacey playing Dr. Evil, that was just like uncanny, wasn't it? It was like he could play Dr. Evil, and yeah. I'm trying to think who else was in cameo in the beginning of that. Anyway, I think we're way off track. Current competitions, Mark?
Yeah. You can win. You can win an EE 4G action cam and viewfinder, a viewfinder watch rather, courtesy of Scan Computers. The competition is open to all eligible members living in the UK, Ireland, and the Isle of Man, and it ends 29th of June. So you better get your skates on. Any
previous competition winners, Mark? I know there is because I'm reading the running order, but for the benefit of the listeners.
Right, here we go. We've got Mark A, who won Logan on Ultra HD Blu-ray. We got Nexus 43. He won the Hatton Garden Job on Blu-ray. Mike Mag won the Great Wall on Blu-ray. J. Daniel P won Mine on Blu-ray, and then Fender 6X. Is that right?
Fender 6 probably.
Won McLaren on DVD.
Okay, so that's competition. So let's move on swiftly to hardware news before we get diverted in some. Oh no, I'm going to Ed now. We're going to get diverted. Ed's first impressions of the Technics SL1200 GR turntable. I thought it was a 1200 you had, Ed.
Regrettably, I've been sent a 1200, but as we know, mechanically, the 1200 and the 1210 are identical. It's just the 1210 is black,
the black
and 8 million% cooler.
Yeah, and the black sounds better.
Well, now this is where it gets complicated, isn't it? This is like the same sort of thinking that red ones go faster. The thing is, for a number of us, and I mentioned this in the copy I've written, that for many of us, these decks always used to be black. That is the finish they were in. That is the finish we associate them with. But they are identical. Technics, the Panasonic UK, the samples that they've selected for review are all and to go out to things, they're all silver. I did ask, I was told sorry. So, but ignore that. First impressions. I suppose the most important thing to say is that at £1,300 for the turntable and arm with no cartridge, Panasonic isn't taking the mickey. It's genuinely competitive. you can see where the extra costs have come from, both in this model and to an extent the £3,000 one as well. It is related, and it's more closely related than the big one to the original 1200, but it is in almost every incremental way better, and it's been an absolute joy to spend some time with it. I find myself sort of going, I don't really need another record player, but I really like this. But mercifully, Panasonic have steamed to my rescue this morning by sending me a stern email asking when they can have it back. So they're going to solve that problem for me. I'm going to try and do my best to get some really cracking shots of it and so on and so forth, and try and get across the level of fit and finish, because it occurs to me that I've taken photos of two turntables for review in the past, one by Newmark, one by Pioneer, which are basically, how do we put this, loving homages to the 1200.
Yeah, they look similar. I guess the thing to say here as well, Ed, is obviously the Technics SL1210 and 1200, when they were in mass production and when they were used as DJ decks and all the rest of it, they only cost £300 to £400 back then.
Yeah.
But this variation of the SL1210 is completely different.
Well, it's interesting because I finally got around to both talking to someone and getting some additional information out. It's interesting. The £3,000 one really doesn't have a lot to do with the 1200 at all. This GR model is much more interesting because, if you like, it is an SL1200 where someone has gone through and gone, well, we've got a bit of extra money to spend. What would you do to make it better? And then throw in the fact that all of the tooling to make it is new, and that really does sort of show in just some of the finish and detailing on some of the items. And yeah, it's if you like, it's what happens when you sit down with anything that's been in production for a while and go, okay, we did it that way back in year dot because that was the way we could do it. What happens now when we've got different approaches and different technology? And yeah, it's a cracking product. It's a number of people who own the originals are still going to go, £1,300 is just the wrong amount of money. All I'd say to that is, until you spend a bit of time with it, it probably won't make sense. But having now spent some time with it, it's a lovely thing, and it's perfectly good enough to work. At the moment, it's got a £500 cartridge which is being reviewed elsewhere, and it's working beautifully with things like that. It's perfectly up to the job of being considered in the same sentence as sort of £2,000 competition when you've factored in the cost of cartridges and things like that.
Let's stick with Panasonic. Let's move on to a new TV, another OLED TV. So without trying to preempt this, Steve, it'll be a 9 out of 10 score, probably a Best Buy badge. Although we haven't discussed this yet, so it's either going to be highly recommended or Best Buy. It's going to be fairly accurate out of the box. It's going to have great black levels. They're going to have fixed the just above black, and there's not going to be any macro block and that kind of thing just above there. Colours are going to look superb, and at a 55 inch, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than the LG.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Moving on.
See you next week.
And I haven't even seen the TV you're talking about.
You are spookily accurate there. Yeah, I guess the question is, I think last week I was talking about should you get an E7 or a B7 given the price differential against performance. And there was no difference in performance. And the question I guess people will be asking is, what's the difference between a £7,000 EZ1002 and a £4,700 65-inch EZ952, and the answer is not a lot. Actually, they are very similar, very, very similar in performance terms. I mean, in fact, the only real differences are that the 1002 has a built-in soundbar, which you're probably not going to use, and it has the additional black filter, absolute black filter. So, yes, maybe in brighter conditions, the ambient light filter does add a little extra, but for a difference of £2,300, I would either not put it opposite a window or turn the lights down, and you'll probably have you'll probably save yourself a lot of money and get exactly the same performance.
Steve, what's the HDR performance like on the EZ952? Because I read a review that said it was rubbish.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's excellent. I mean, basically, you're getting, and I've got to say, full kudos here to Panasonic, because they are delivering a TV that is essentially, like these EZ1002, is bordering on a professional monitor in terms of its accuracy and performance with SDR and HDR, but for a price tag that's in line with the competition as far as OLED TVs go. You can't fault this television in terms of its picture quality, its color accuracy out of the box. It's it's reference out of the box basically. So bad news for calibrators. In terms of its HDR performance, I thought it was superb. Yes, it isn't quite as bright as the competition, and I think maybe some people were maybe hinting that maybe just in terms of its little bit not quite as bright, accurate delivery of HDR, maybe not quite as bright in terms of its specular highlights as some of the competition. But that we've seen big variations in brightness from panel to panel, so it could just be panel variations there. As everyone knows, with OLED panels, there is quite a wide variation from one panel to the next in terms of peak brightness, so that might be a factor. But otherwise, yeah, it's absolutely stonking performance. The big issue that's going to be the case with this TV, and it also applies to EZ1002, is because it's going up against predominantly the Sony A1 and the LGs. The Panasonics don't support Dolby Vision, and I think that is going to work against it in the marketplace.
And again, we're not saying that from a performance point of view. We're just saying that's a box ticking exercise from a consumer. Consumer's going to look at that and think, well, I'm going to buy the LG. Or
if you look at the price wise, it's the LG is. I think it's being priced exactly the same price as the B7, so there's no difference in price. But obviously the B7 does include Dolby Vision, and given that the EZ952 is a smidge more accurate, but I hope, and like you were saying last week, Phil, the differences are not going to be perceivable. So you're talking about TVs that are very, very almost exactly the same.
So what we're saying again, Steve, is that this is yet another OLED panel that's come in, and again, it's accurate out of the box and really bang on the money, that you wouldn't really need a calibrator unless you're a real stickler and you want the absolute best. You wouldn't get a calibrator in, because out of the box these things are. Once again, it's a different OLED TV, but there all seem to be a general trend this year.
This year, the accuracy out of the box on these OLEDs has been absolutely spectacular. I mean, again, with the one I've reviewed, the EZ952 I've just reviewed, there would be absolutely no point getting it calibrated. Paying £300 to get it calibrated would be pointless, because you wouldn't see the difference. It was that accurate. All the errors were below 2 out of the box. So, you're not going to notice any difference between below 2 and below 1. And so, yeah, I mean, but that trend is across the board with all the manufacturers, and that's good to see. I mean, not, as I said a minute ago, not great news for calibrators, but for the consumer, you're getting these really accurate TVs now straight out of the box, assuming, of course, you select the correct picture modes.
Which is a video that we're going to have to make at some point, Steve, which is just what is the best settings for an OLED TV across the board, because they're all so similar nowadays. You just have to bang them into the right mode, and you have to question a lot of the criticisms that come in some of these reviews as well. And let's point out that these reviews, they're not the type of reviewers that sit down with calibration gear, probably don't even know how to calibrate a TV. They are just assessing it out of the box. They're going to shove it in the brightest mode because that's the natural thing to do.
I've seen some, because obviously often the TV comes to me straight from a previous reviewer, and so sometimes they're already in the settings they were using, and occasionally it is quite shocking some of the settings that get used. You're thinking, like, this person clearly has absolutely no idea how to set up a television, and you feel sorry for the manufacturers in a way, because they put all this hard work in to deliver these really accurate TVs, really high performing televisions, and then someone goes and selects a silly mode and starts mucking around with the settings, and you think, right, great, that's all that work down the drain then. But the fact is, to get accurate pictures on these TVs is dead easy. With the EZ952, stick it in Pro 1 or Pro 2, you're 90% of the way there, and then just a couple of minor tweaks here and there, and you're done. So it's not difficult. It's not difficult at all. But unfortunately, despite years of picture perfect, we are still battling, I think, not just consumer ignorance, but also misinformation from some other review sites.
Yeah, and sometimes from manufacturers themselves. But it is interesting, though. You've raised Picture Perfect there, and it's on the site. People want to go and see it, just click on the drop down, and it's in there. Drop down menu, it's in there. It's amazing how far that's moved on, because I'm trying to think. Picture Perfect, we did 2012.
2012, yeah. It's a very different world now, isn't it?
Very different, because as we're just discussing, these OLEDs, all of them from all the manufacturers this year have, and even the retail samples that we've had given to us by retailers to double check it, they've all been really bang on out of the box. And not just OLEDs as well. I've noticed the same trend with a lot of the LCD TVs as well, that shove them in the cinema modes and they are pretty close to being perfect.
It must be so that the processors are getting better.
Yeah, it is smart processing, and also the lookup tables are much more accurate. So
well, which goes with the processing power to do it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, there's a definite trend. I've noticed it over the last couple of years. Increasingly, TVs are getting more and more accurate out of the box in the right modes, and that's, I suppose, for the general consumer, that's great news, because you can get a really accurate picture without having to shell out for additional money for a calibration.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, you still have your little calibration business going. It must be difficult for you, and it's almost like that line from Jurassic Park that you're now extinct or close to being extinct. What should forum members listen to? Because obviously there are going to be calibrators out there that are going to be pushing their services, and sometimes, we're not saying that this will happen, but sometimes it could be misconstrued that people are going to get a massive difference when it comes to calibration. What is the true story here? I mean, I know, I'm just asking on behalf of, obviously, the listeners here. What is the true story?
I think it's in the majority of cases with the TV, certainly for the ones that I've tested in the wild out there in retail samples. I mean, it does vary from model to model and manufacturer to manufacturer, but generally there is an improvement to be had currently. If the calibration is done well and the TV, because quite often find that certain manufacturers, their TVs will push a certain color in the grayscale more than others. So sometimes it'd be a bit too much green, or quite often it was too much blue, and you can improve it, but it isn't a massive difference. And I think this is getting more and more the case, because the accuracy out of the box is getting so good that you're not going to see, as long as and obviously if you go to someone's house and they've got it in dynamic mode, there's going to be a gigantic difference between that and the calibrated image. But that would just be a case of, if you just selected the correct the correct picture mode, it would make a big difference. But yeah, it's more about getting it accurate and getting the TV to perform optimally. And sometimes there are things that calibrators can do that will help in that area, because again, people necessarily, I mean, this is things we do mention in Picture Perfect, but quite often people have their TV still over scanning. They're still scaling the image because that's the way it's shipped, and they don't realize that. Ironically, I've seen my reviewers who have also not realized this is the case. So, there's some ignorance and misinformation out there too. Those sort of little tricks people can pick up quite easily. But again, you don't need a calibrator to do that. You can get that from things like Picture Perfect. There are improvements that can be made, but these days they're not night and day improvements, and people need to be prepared for that. And as we've discussed many times before, the most common statements often are things like, it isn't as bright and it isn't as colourful, but that's probably because what they were watching was too bright, particularly for nighttime viewing, and also oversaturated. Yeah,
and of course, that's just the screen. There's more to somebody's system than just the picture quality. So you've got to think about all the sources that are going through. Yeah. Are they using an AVR? What are the source lines into the set as well? And you can have some major issues there. Not so much nowadays if you've got newer components and so on, but certainly back a few years ago, you could have instances where the AVR would be messing with the gamma, even on a pass-through and that kind of thing. Doesn't happen now, but it has happened in the past, and that's where other issues could be found, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. There have been AVRs with picture controls in, which I don't personally approve of doing. I think the picture controls should be on the display and nowhere else. I mean, I'm sure Mark testified to this too. Blu-ray players where they've had picture modes in them that have manipulated the image, which again, I don't agree with. You should just be outputting what's on the disc, and that's the end of it. So all these things are things that people may not be aware of, and they can be affecting their picture along the video chain. So you're right, Phil. You go in, you calibrate the TV, you get your day, your night settings, a game mode, HDR mode, you optimize everything in that sense, calibrate it, get it perfect, and then obviously you optimize the entire video chain from source all the way through to the display. So there are lots of things that calibrators do, or good calibrators should be doing when they come around someone's house. But the reality is that these days, TVs are getting so accurate now that the amount of value that they're adding is unfortunately becoming less and less.
Okay, so that's food for thought. We'll keep that in mind. We'll come back to this subject once we get a few more TVs through. We've had a glut of OLED, so I think we need to be balancing that out, Steve, in the next few weeks with some LCD TVs, which should be happening anyway. Some pretty big ones coming.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to talk about a soundbar.
That's careless.
What always seems to happen, and everything I've read on the forums and the comments and so on, you always get the comment, oh well, you should have an AVR and separate speakers and you get better sound. Yes, we all know that's the case, but a soundbar exists for a specific reason in it, and the reason it exists is that people maybe don't want 5 speakers and a subwoofer in their living room. They maybe just want to upgrade the sound on the TV. Maybe that's the only goal that they have. It makes it difficult when it comes to reviewing soundbars. Steve, you've done quite a few. Mark, you've probably done about the same. What is the context? Is probably what I'm getting at here, of where the soundbar exists and how should it be scored and how should it be marked and so on, because I'm in this quandary at the minute. I haven't finished the review. I thought it'd be finished by now because I'm trying to answer the question. This is a really nice sounding soundbar, but it doesn't do anything else. It's just a soundbar. It's easy to set up. You plug the HDMI cable in at one end, you stick it in at the ERC on the TV, and it sets itself up and it's done. It's ready. I
think for most people that's perfect, isn't it?
Exactly.
And if you're looking for a soundbar, you're looking for a soundbar.
Exactly. And the only thing that this thing does that's a feature is it has aptX Bluetooth. So you can connect your mobile phone and listen to some tunes. It's not very wide. It's about the width of a 65-inch TV, so stereo separation is not great. Sound field it's wide enough. But the main thing is that and I've got a high-end Samsung TV here, which sounds pretty good because I think it was a $4,000 TV, Steve, or $4,500 TV when it came out. So I'm using it for testing purposes, obviously. It sounded pretty good out of the box anyway with the speakers that's in there, but I have to say that this Q Acoustics M3 soundbar, it moves it up a notch. It's a fuller sound. It's a nicer tone to the sound. It doesn't sound as boxy, and it's worth the money. But you can see why people would question, well, why would you have the soundbar? I don't know what our thoughts are here, but to me, I think if somebody's going from, has a $4,500 TV, should they be going 5.1 or should they be going with a soundbar? This is where I'm having the quandary.
It all depends, doesn't it? It all depends on your room and your tastes and how you want to go, how good you want things, and your wife.
There's another weird subset of users here, and I begin to get the feeling there's more of them than we perhaps give credit for. Because we don't encounter them on our own forum because of the nature of who we are and our interests. But from my sort of background, where there's much more two-channel involved, I know at least 15, 20 people where they have a very, very good two-channel system. It's in the same room as what is often a very high specification television. OLEDs are now quite common amongst them. And they are quite keen users of soundbars. Essentially, it allows the television to sound less offensive to them, but it keeps it and its functionality separate from systems which more often than not are not really suitable to just simply taking an optical feed out the television and hoping for the best. And in varying levels, I think that crops up where it might not be at the high end sort of point where some of my friends are, but if you've bought yourself a pleasant lifestyle system and it's at one sort of end of an open plan living area, it's then far from unreasonable to beef up the television with another self-contained item rather than trying to get two units which might not be anywhere near one another sort of talking to each other. And I think that's more common than we give credit for. It's not replacing 5.1, it's simply beefing up their existing hardware.
It seems to be really quite a wide market, the soundbar market, which is the conclusion I've kind of come to, because you've got products like this at £300, which is still a fair wedge of cash to spend on one speaker. But it does what it says on the tin. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't make promises that it can't keep, like it's going to do immersive audio and all the rest of it. There's also a trend when I reviewed the Lingdorf and you reviewed the Arcam SR250, Ed, which are new products where they're traditional stereo amplifiers, but they've been added, HDMI video switch and 4K pass-through. It has been
They're
added
going to get more common,
more room correction and so on, because there's a lot of people who are going from 5.1 systems or 7.1 systems in living rooms, and the fashion is these days to have a less clutter within the living space. So these people are either going to the higher end soundbar, so way above what we're reviewing here, or to these systems like the Lingdorf and like the Arkham, and having a decent floor standards or whatever. So there's definite trends here, and there's definitely a market for the soundbar. So this common question that always gets asked, well, why don't you just tell people to buy an AVR and 5 speakers? Well, it's because the market's changing so much, and the conclusions that I've come to is that products like these, they add value to what you have. Even a £4,500 TV there, the speakers were good inside it, but this £300 soundbar, it just adds so much more, because this particular one, the M3, it's just concentrating on sound quality. It's not adding in any DSP programs or anything like that. It's just, we're going to beef up it doesn't even come with a subwoofer. It's just, we're going to beef up the sound, and it does that, and it does what it says on the tin. So yes, you could add a subwoofer to it if you wanted to, but I don't think there's any need, because I think it's designed, and it's really quite a nice design, because it's actually got a curve to the back of it, and I've got a curved screen here, so it actually fits in really neatly and nicely in front of the screen, because it's got that curve to it as well. So that might not work so good if you've got a flat screen, but then you're not really going to notice it, if you're sitting bang onto the screen. So it's a nice little touch like that, and like I say, it works straight away by connecting up the ERC HDMI. You can also use optical or RCA analog ends. Does Bluetooth, does what it says on the tin, costs £300, and is probably worth the money. It's a strange market, Steve, because you've looked at some soundbars that do cost considerable amounts of money, that do offer or claim to offer Dolby Atmos and immersive sound and all the rest of it. I think that's where it becomes a real grey area between, are you actually getting the value for money there with the soundbar, or are you actually better buying a separate AVR and speakers?
Yeah, because I just recently reviewed the LG SJ9, and that's £1,000. It's a fair chunk of cash for a soundbar. It's a soundbar, comes with a wireless sub, and it supports Dolby Atmos. But the thing is, it's got 3 forward firing channels, it's got 2 upward firing channels, and it's also got 2 sideways firing channels, which have got designed to sort of bounce sounds off the sidewalls to create a sense of surround. And that bit doesn't really work that well. So what you end up with is a very front heavy sound experience. You've got the front 3 channels, a very wide front soundstage. You've got the sounds bouncing off the ceiling sort of at the front of the room. And that's about it. There's no real sense of genuine immersion or surround to it. So you do get an overhead experience to a degree. But when you start talking about £1,000, you could buy you could get a Denon X2400 for less than £500, and that's a cracking AV receiver. It gives you the full, and you could run what could you run on that? So you could run 5.1.2 on that properly. And obviously you'd have to buy speakers to go with it, but you're at the price point where you can, if you so wish, run a proper 5.1.2 Atmos setup with an AVR. Now, obviously, I think Mark was talking about a few minutes ago, your reasons might be different. You might not want an AVR, you might not want speakers at the rear, although some sound bars like the Samsung K950, that comes with wireless rear speakers, and they have upward firing drivers as well. So that actually does deliver a full 5.1.4 experience. Again, that's a bit more expensive than it's over £1,000, but you are talking about, maybe you just don't want the hassle of having speakers around the room. Maybe your wife doesn't want speakers around the room, and you're going to go for a soundbar solution that gives you a taste of that Atmos experience, but maybe not the full thing, because for whatever reason you don't want to do that. But you are right, Phil. It is a strange area, because once you get into those kind of price points, you really are at a point where you could, if you so wished, go for an AVR and.
Well, I'm thinking about the Yamaha 5600. I mean, that's nearly £2,000. Well, it is £2,000 if you add the subwoofer, isn't it? So, that is a serious chunk of change there, where you could have a pretty good. Even if you didn't want to go 5 channels, Ed, you could go with an amplifier and a couple of 4 standards, and you're really up in the performance.
No, absolutely. I mean, what my time with the SR250 in particular was very, very interesting, because that's different again to the Lingdorf, as I understand it, because it does have the full processing ability to handle DTS Master HD. Obviously, none of the object-based surround formats because that's pointless. But it became very clear. You'd sit down to watch something, and after about 20 minutes, it made no difference to my enjoyment of what was going on. That there wasn't much energy at the back because it wasn't trying to do anything sort of fake with the rear surround. It's simply two decent channels with two well-placed stereo speakers. It was really enjoyable. I have said before that if I was just exiting this industry to become a porn star or whatever, the SR250 is one of the things that does that. So it's one of the most complete products I've ever tested for anybody. It was the only time in the entire time I've had my current ridiculous equipment rack that every single piece of source equipment was connected to one amplifier, and it all worked and it all sounded really good.
Sorry, you distracted me there. You said you leaving to be a porn star. That's a niche within a niche within a niche there.
We have seen on the internet that Rule 31 somewhere, pasty fat white man porn is the in thing, and my complete and utter lack of shame. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, I'll have to.
We're not going to get distracted, are we? So
I'll have to. Yeah, I'll have to listen to your answer there when it comes to editing it because I was distracted and just didn't take any of that in. Right.
That's what she said.
Right. Okay. So that's soundbars. I guess what we're saying is there is a definite market there. Don't knock it if it's not for you, but it will be for somebody. And there is a trend at the minute for downsizing, basically. And there are different routes to downsize and the different price points and so on. And I guess what we're saying there is that when you get into the really expensive soundbars, Steve, the likes of the Yamahas and the high-end Samsungs, I guess you really need to be thinking through why you're going for something like that and not a separate system, because once you're starting to get to that, you're placing speakers in the room anyway, aren't you, with the wireless surrounds and so on. So
you are.
So then the argument becomes, why don't you take it the full hog and why don't you do it properly? So it's an interesting one. If you've got any views or points of views of what we've talked about so far, the Technics turntable, the Panasonic OLED TV, or soundbars in general, leave your comments in the comment section under the podcast on the forums. And we're going to wrap up this section, as we always do at the end of the month, with Ed's album, vinyl release and playlists of the month.
Good stuff. Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Right, playlist of the month. I'm afraid it's back on Tidal, because actually Tidal's playlist game, they're back. They had a real weak period for me, but they're back on it. Now, confession time, I absolutely love French electronic and dance music. I do. It is my firmly held opinion that they are the best in the world at that particular genre. And someone on Tidal, this one is not given a curator credit, has put together a playlist called the Parisian Underground, and it's, if you are in any way a fan of music that goes beep, it's bloody marvellous. It's a really, really good listen.
Just making a note of that one, Ed. Thank you. I didn't realise that was it.
It's fantastic. It was helping me through the hot period quite nicely. I really enjoyed it. There's some cracking leads on there. There's a couple of artists I was unfamiliar with who will now no doubt be costing me some money as I hunt down their work. So yeah, well done, Tidal. And as before, if you go back to the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago, if you can get the URL of that podcast, you should be able to transpose it into another streaming service. So you don't have to have Tidal. You should be able to get hold of it and then work it out from there. Even if I had to post the URL in the actual comments in the podcast, I can do that if anyone needs me to. Right, album of the month and vinyl release of the month are two different ones this month. Album of the month is the fairly long-awaited second album by London Grammar. It's called Truth is a Beautiful Thing. The first album it sort of came out of clear blue sky and it blew us away. If you're looking for something radically different, no, you've come to the wrong place. It's still more of the same sort of basic ingredients, but given that the basic ingredients include a woman with one of the very best voices in pop music right now. I don't think that's too much of a downer. It's available on pretty much any format you could care to think of. I think everything except cassette, you're laughing. So that's why it's my album of the month. You can listen to it across all of the streaming services. The CD release will be great. The vinyl release is good, and so on and so forth. It's a great listen. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not my vinyl release of the month because there's another album came out this month, which is the second album by Royal Blood. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Royal Blood. It's two men who make a lot of noise with a guitar and a set of drums. It's not a chronically bad recording, but it's still a bit compressed. And with the first album, the vinyl release clearly had a different mix to the digital because it was a hell of a lot less compressed, and that is the case this time as well. The album's called How Did We Get So Dark, and if you have the means of listening to it on vinyl, it's one of those awkward ones where, although vinyl is the inferior technical format to the digital, because of that inferiority, it is actually the better sounding version of that album. So if you're going to get hold of it, the vinyl release would be my recommendation for it. I've never heard of any of those bands. You, Steve? You heard any of those?
No. London Grammar I have heard of. I've never actually heard them, although maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah, but I'm going to go and check it out. So thanks for bringing up these, because sometimes your recommendations, Ed, and this is a compliment, don't take it the wrong way. Sometimes you come up with stuff and I think, what the hell? And I go and listen to it and I think, yeah, actually that's pretty good. And it will stay on my loop for a few weeks. And I actually listened to the box set that you bought, Kraftwerk.
The Kraftwerk.
Yeah. Really good, really good. I've been listening to that quite a bit recently.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some. It must be said, there is some mileage to my mind that whenever the country is in a state of just turmoil, for whatever reason, we do tend to start releasing some good music when that happens. It's the only ray of light. So yeah, we can look forward to at least some great albums that we won't be able to afford to buy over the next 2 to 3 years.
So yeah, the anniversary edition of Sgt. Pepper's.
I did listen to it.
Yes, I listened to it as well.
I've got to be honest, Heresy, I know, it's not really my favourite Beatles album, but it's very impressive what they've done with it. And some of the extra additional things on there are fascinating. If I was going to buy it, obviously it would have been on vinyl, and it's just pretty expensive to buy in that way.
Yeah. Okay, movie news next. Okay, so moving on to movie news, and I can guarantee you that film of the month is, it certainly wasn't the film that I saw last night.
Worst film of the month?
Well, that would be worst film of probably the decade. We're talking about the new Transformers movie. Don't know why I went to see it. I think I went to see it so we could have a conversation on the podcast, Steve. It was nothing more than that, and I put myself through that for the sake of the listeners here, so they don't have to, go and suffer.
He's taken one for the team.
Like I say at the beginning of the podcast, I was sat. Normally, I would move from where I was because this dad and his kid sitting right behind me, and the kid wouldn't have shut up the whole film. But actually, I found them more entertaining than what was on the screen, because the kid was rightly saying, "But why is he doing that, Dad? And why is that happening?" And the dad, you could hear the dad get really pissed off because he couldn't understand it either. And it's one of these films, Steve, that somebody's had an idea somewhere, and then you can just imagine the conversation in the script writing room, if there was a script writing room. I don't know if I can give them even that, but you can imagine going, wouldn't it be cool to bring King Arthur into this? Oh yeah, what about if Transformers were around back? Oh yeah, okay, right, and so let's go with this. And I'm not going to spoil anything because I didn't understand it, so I can't spoil it if I didn't understand it. Basically, it's an excuse to have big fights with Transformers and big special effects, and kudos, special effects were spot on, sound mix was bombastic as you would expect. It's the first time in that cinema that I've actually felt the chair move at certain scenes because of the bass and all the rest of it. If you want a lot of noise and a lot of Hasbro toys on the screen fighting each other that you can go and buy straight after you've walked out of the movie, that's probably the thing. There's characters in there who suddenly get dropped and you're never seen again within the film. There's characters just pop out of nowhere with silly names. I mean, for anything that the English lasses in it could have been called Chelsea Wembley. Some of the names that they were coming up with. The geography of England, you're going from the White Cliffs of Dover to Northumbria and back again, and then to London within the space of 3 cuts.
They went from Dover to Oxford to London to up near you down to Wiltshire in space of about 5 minutes. I mean, I know films don't generally, unless you are familiar with the place where it's been shot, don't follow geography particularly well. But Transformers has a fantastic history of utterly ignoring any sense of geography. The best one being in the second one, where they're in the Smithsonian in Washington and they walk out the back and they're in a desert.
Yeah, I mean it's shit like that, and I'm gonna go. This was just utter pish, Ed. It was truly utter pish.
Well, I don't know if you saw on your Facebook profile yesterday, someone had collated some of the official review stuff that's been said about this. Some highlights. The final act is a non-stop special effects bludgeoning of the senses that is zero fun.
Yeah.
There is no redemption to be found here, only suffering.
Yeah.
Shapeless mounds of parts and pistons slugging and slicing each other in front of ruins and spaceships as they gush sparks and dribble oily green robot juice. And then freed of concerns like plausibility or story, you can simply gape in wonder at the ruthlessly thunderous images in front of you. Maybe that's the feeling of brain cells dying a painful, anguished death.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I've got to say it's I can see that even the 12-year-old in me was like, yeah, okay, this is shit, because it really is so bad. And some of the humour, I mean, the screen I was in, it was quite busy because obviously it's opening day, so you expect it to be quite busy, even 6 o'clock screening. So, but even the audience was groaning at the humour. It was so bad. I don't know about you, Steve, but and you could see some of the jokes coming a mile off. They were flagpole so badly, and we talk about charm and humour, and you forgive a film if it's bad because it's got certain aspects that you can take away from it. And the only thing, and I thought about this, long and hard on the drive back last night, thinking I need to go and get petrol again, but also thinking, thinking, what is it that I can take away as a positive from this? And that's taking into account the sound mix, which you expect to be bombastic and over the top, and the special effects and all the rest of it. There was a couple of shots in there that were absolutely beautiful. So from a cinematography point of view, there was a couple of shots in there that were absolutely dripping with beauty. They were fantastic, but they were few and far between, and they were just stood on from a great height by everything else that was in that film. And I think nowadays when you see Michael Bay's name, I mean, back when I was really going to the movies a lot, probably in my teens and my early 20s, the name Michael Bay, yeah, I'm going to go and see that. That's going to be good fun. It's going to be energetic. It's going to be well put together and all the rest of it. Nowadays, you see his name and you think, no, I know what's coming. I know what's coming. I don't need to put myself through it.
Yeah, you know what's coming. It's going to be bombastic, over the top, 360-degree shots, helicopters flying overhead. Slow mo.
They even made slow mo part of the film. One of the special powers. They made a joke within a joke that everybody groaned at as well.
A lead actress who looks like a supermodel, dresses like a stripper, even though she's meant to be a doctor of history at Oxford University.
Yeah.
It just, technically, like you say, Phil, it's shot on IMAX Alexa 65 cameras in native 3D.
It's going to be really annoying on disc because I saw it in 2D, you saw it in 3D. 2D screen I was at, it was
aspect ratio,
185 to 1 aspect ratio, and it changed. It kept changing. It kept going to 240 and back. Obviously, the masking didn't change on the screen; just the black bars appeared. Yeah. So it was shown at 185 to 1, but with black bars obviously inserted in certain shots, and then open frame at other shots. Probably the same.
Okay, I was going to ask you that because that's exactly what they did in 3D. I thought that was just going to be 3D version. I thought they might screen it at 2.35 to 1 for. So yeah, aspect ratio constantly changing. Because it was a scope ratio screen at the cinema, but being projected within that at 1.85 to 1. That was annoying because you think, well, I want to fill the screen up, So that bit really pissed me off. But you can see where the $250 million went on the screen.
Yeah.
So it didn't go to script. I mean, they had something like 5 writers. I mean, all of them should have been sacked. it doesn't make a lick of sense. I mean, none of them ever have. They never have made it. They are just there to sell toys, product placement, have big fights.
The thing was, Steve, though, when it started, the whole gladiator type thing, and again, I'm not spoiling it for people because it's in the trailer, and I don't consider trailers spoilers. The whole gladiator opening King Arthur thing, that's mentioned in the trailer. You think that, give him his due. There's a genesis of an interesting idea there. If he played it a little bit more serious, there's an interesting idea there. But of course, this is Michael Bay, so he drops it as soon as he can, and then he reinstates it when it suits him for a plot point that he thinks he needs to make, and then it's dropped again. And it turned into Indiana Jones at one point, and there was loads of rip-offs. I mean, there's drones that look like TIE fighters, and there's and you're just looking at one big Hasbro toy advert, which I don't mind if there's a decent plot, or even if there's not a plot, there's decent action and you can follow it through. And I think the first Transformers movie did that because there wasn't too many Transformers.
It also had the benefit of the novelty.
Yeah,
to
it had that as well, but there wasn't.
Someone pointed out in the review thread for this that I completely agree with them. That first moment where that helicopter turns into a robot and starts smashing the shit out of things that is still immense. Yeah. It has for one perfect moment I am 8 again. But unfortunately, it's there's only so many times you can pull that little stunt before it's like, it's another enormous robot.
Yeah,
hooray!
Yeah, there's another positive I'm going to pull out of the film just for the fact that I'm a petrol head, and you love it as well, Ed. The number of supercars in this film's brilliant. And the McLaren going through London, oh my god, that sounds epic. I mean, obviously,
how many times did they go around the Bank of England, though?
I know. They just kept going round.
They kept using the same shots, because I think that's the Bank of England. Oh, there's Bank of England again. Hang on, there's Sir Hamid Yarch. Oh, the Bank of England again. Hang on, there was no. I mean, obviously, it was which shot looked cool rather than where they actually were.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're a petrol head, the use of cars within this series has been really, really good, and this one no exception. Fantastic Lamborghini in there. There's fantastic McLaren. There's a Mustang in there. It doesn't look like a Mustang because they've added every bit you could add onto it for a police car. If that's great as well, and that appeals to the men and the boys. You know what I mean? But it's just so over the top, so bombastic, and even if there was just an ounce of something interesting there that you could follow for 2.5 hours, you could maybe forgive it. But no, it was just it insulted my intelligence all the way through. Even as a 12-year-old, I think I'd be a bit pissed off about it, and I'd think it was a great spectacle, but it's really hollow, isn't it, Steve? There's just
there were aspects that they could have developed that might have been interesting. The little girl who just disappears for 2/3 of the film, sort of introduced at the beginning and then disappears and then appears again at the end. I thought her relationship with Mark Wahlberg's character could have been developed and would have been an interesting aspect. I thought what was really funny was John Turturro literally phoning in a performance.
Yeah, totally.
Like, he literally phones it in.
This is what I was saying at the beginning. He just uses the character for a certain bit and then drops them completely. And some characters you never see them again for the rest of the film, and you think, well, what happened to them? It's strange. It's filmmaking by numbers. He's dialing it in. Technically, it's superb. Technically, I could not fault it at all in terms of cinematography, in terms of special effects, in terms of soundtrack, makeup, all the rest of it. It's continuity. No, I couldn't fault any of that. It was just a big steaming pile of shit.
I quite like the fact that Andy Hopkins clearly realised that too, because he was hamming it up something chronic. And at times I thought he's taking the piss. He's taking the piss.
And what's bizarre is that he must have been filming this on or about the same sort of period that he was turning in that really quite impressive performance in Westworld.
Yeah,
it's like I'm having my weekend off now. I'm off to work for Michael Bay for a bit. I'm just going to leave my brain on the table. Bye.
I think you can guess what our verdicts are. I scored it a 2 out of 10, and that was just for the technical stuff and a couple of really nice.
I would have given it sort of 3 or 4. I mean, I think same as Sharuna. Technically it's well made, but Otherwise, it's just vacuous. It's a bit, to quote Simon Pegg, it's a jumped up fireworks display of a toy commercial.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so film of the month. For me, it's got to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The opening 5-10 minutes of that is inspired. The great comedy, really funny. I thought they pulled a little bit too much of the heartstrings at the end, but another solid film there from that franchise. And a close second, I would say, would be Wonder Woman, which I didn't think I was going to enjoy. Being a DC film, I went in with really low expectations. You have to buy into the universe. Whether you buy into it or not depends on your enjoyment of the film. I went with it, and I thought it was fairly good.
Yeah, well, since Guardians came out about 2 months ago, I'm obviously going to go with Wonder Woman, which I thought was entertaining and charming, which certainly wasn't the case for Transformers.
No, and I'd go and see The Mummy before you go and see Transformers. And The Mummy was the Mummy was bad.
Was preferable to Transformers.
Okay, so moving on from film of the month, then films opening this Friday that we can go and see with our Limitless card, Steve.
We've got Baby Driver, which is the new film, in fact, the first film from Edgar Wright since The World's End, which is quite a few years ago now.
Looks good.
Yeah, it looks really good. Baby Driver, which is basically a getaway driver called Baby. Got a great cast: Jamie Foxx, Kevin Spacey, John Hamm, and it looks like it's going to be good fun. It's got a combination of music and action and comedy and all the things that Edgar Wright does really well. And in the trailers, at least, it looks like it should be good fun. And I'm definitely going to see. It actually opens on Wednesday, by the way, not Friday. It opens on Wednesday.
Yeah, Steve. Quick question for you: what's the car that he's using in the trailer?
I don't know. What's he driving in the trailer?
It's an Impreza.
It is. It's an Impreza. I was just testing Steve's car knowledge there.
It's red, isn't it?
It's a red car. Congratulations, Steve. You are just about. Actually, no, you're not quite on par with my son, who's 3. He's able to recognise certain actual specific brands and models now.
What else can we go and see, Steve?
Yeah, we've also got Wish Upon, which is a horror film that opens on Friday, which I don't actually know much about, to be honest. It sort of crept up on me because obviously the big releases are Baby Driver and Despicable Me 3, which I guess will be the big release of the week in terms of box office. I'm
trying to think if I've seen 2. I can't think if I've seen 2 or not.
Well, given that Minions made $1 billion, I'm expecting Despicable Me 3 to do very well box office wise.
Yeah, you'll notice that all the advertising is the Minions again, though. Yeah. That is the pool of the film, really, isn't it?
True. The plot this time is that Gru's got a twin brother. I think he's called Drew, and obviously he wants Gru to get back to his villainous ways. So that seems like. So the trailer was before Transformers. That's the only reason I know that. For me, Baby Driver is the film I'm definitely going to see next week. I'll just get Despicable Me on disc.
Yeah, Baby Driver.
I'll wait to see what Shruna thinks. Yeah. Shruna's already seen Wish Upon at his press screening, so I'll wait to see what she thinks of it in her review.
Okay. Blu-rays of the month. I didn't buy any. Surprise.
I bought one, and I could have bought it on Ultra HD Blu-ray, not released in the States, but released in this country, bizarrely. Didn't, and ended up buying it because I wasn't sure about the film and didn't want to blow a lot of cash on it. I bought Split on Blu-ray, which is the most recent film from M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong. And I have to say, it surprised me. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. James McAvoy plays a character with multiple personalities, and he is brilliant. I've always thought McAvoy is a fantastic actor. He's absolutely superb in Filth, for example. But he's a very talented actor, and he's really good in this, playing 5 or 6 very distinct personalities within the same body. It's a quite exciting, tense thriller of a film, and it has not a twist exactly, but something happens at the end which completely changes your perception of the entire film, which I really liked. So actually, for once, I haven't bought. It's the only Blu-ray that I bought, but I did think it was a great film, very interesting, worth checking out, particularly if you're familiar with some of M. Night Shyamalan's more earlier works. I won't say any more than that, but that's worth checking out. I enjoyed it.
Moving on to Blu-ray releases this week, what can we go? Oh, Jesus, I've just seen the list.
Yeah, not much this week. Bit shit. 50 Shades Darker gets a release on both Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray. Also, its previous film, 50 Shades of Grey, has also had an Ultra HD Blu-ray release. Those are the two I did not buy. recently because I just drew the line there. I won't say any more about it. Got no interest in it whatsoever. I'm sure no one else has listening to this. Patriots Day also comes out on Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray, and Patriots Day is actually a really good film. I enjoyed it. It's
a Boston Marathon, isn't it?
Boston Marathon.
With Marky Mark.
And it's Marky Mark again, but this time Marky Mark doing something decent and delivering a good performance. Obviously, Transformers was just a paycheck gig, but he did this. I know he's a Boston native, so I think it meant a fair bit to him personally. And it's a good procedural cover, a good procedural movie in terms of the police and the FBI and how they investigated the bombing and caught the bombers. And I thought it was really good.
Okay. What rubbish can we buy in UHD?
There haven't actually been any big announcements recently, as in what's coming. Obviously, this next month or so, we've got some interesting time. We've got things like Kong, Skull Island coming. Did you not buy T2, by the way, Phil?
Which T2?
Trainspotting 2.
All right, Trainspotting 2. No, I haven't picked it up yet. I haven't had a chance to pick it up yet.
That is available, and is on my list of things I'm getting. Also coming out is Life, the sort of alien on the ISS, and Kong Skull Island, as I said, and also Fate of the Furious, which I believe is going to be a Dolby Vision disc.
Right.
It's got everything. The Rock in Dolby Vision.
Have you not seen T2 Trainspotting 2 yet?
I haven't, no.
No, right.
I did watch the weekend. It's my Ultra HD Blu-ray of the month. I did watch Batman, the Lego Batman movie, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah,
and
that's superb.
Fantastic. Looked fantastic on Ultra HD.
Not as good as the Lego movie, but because they basically didn't have as much to play on. But still some excellent humour in there, some excellent adult humour in there, and the relationship with the Joker and stuff is just laugh out loud funny. Really is good stuff.
Yeah, it was really. I really enjoyed it. It looked sounded fantastic, and it was full of some really good gags. And obviously, if you're familiar with Batman's, particularly their cinematic history, they poke fun of that quite nicely. And there's a brilliant bit where they flash back to '66. I don't know what the hell was going on there.
Yep. Right. Okay. So, what's your UHD of the month then?
Batman. The Lego Batman movie is my UHD of the month. I think it's a great film, and it looks and sounds fantastic.
Okay. We also need to do TV shows of the month, so this is for everybody. Let's go to Mark.
Yeah, since we last talked about TV shows, I don't think I've watched anything at all. I've just finished off. I know. I don't know what's happened. I think the kids have not been going to sleep at night because it's been hot, and I've just not been watching anything. I've just finished Better Call Saul, which I think concluded this week. I think that was the final episode. That was very good, very enjoyable. Very good. And I'm about to start season 3 of Bloodlines tonight, I think. Is Fargo available now?
Yeah, Fargo's on. It's on Channel 4.
Finished?
No,
I've been on Channel 4.
Three
I've been waiting
episodes
for Netflix. Right. Oh, my God. I've missed that. Right, okay. Yeah, and I'll catch up with that as well. So that's for me. But yeah, I've been watching virtually nothing at night.
Okay. Ed?
I'm still going to fly the flag for American Gods, because I'm thoroughly enjoying that on Amazon Prime.
Have you finished it yet?
No, because it comes out every week.
I thought is episode 8 not the last one?
I don't know, but it might be.
I hope not, because it didn't make a lot of sense if that was the ending.
Well, it's hard to say. I wasn't. In that case, I may not have been paying attention. But in terms of something new, now I have to stress I haven't watched this yet, but I have high hopes for it. It seems to be getting some quite good reviews. Is on Netflix this Glow thing about female wrestlers in the 80s. It appears to be an intriguing combination of being played for laughs and then some with a heartfelt message at the center of it. But it's got a good cast, and yeah, I'm going to try and watch that over the next couple of days when I'm not frantically trying to meet all of my various deadlines for people. So that's another thing. And can I also continue to fly? I think I've mentioned it in the past. If you have the History Channel, you owe it to yourself to watch at least one episode of Forged in Fire, because it's the strangest and yet one of the most compelling programs I've ever watched.
I really enjoy that, Ed. I watch it.
What's it about?
It's
like MasterChef with knives.
Yeah, basically, or swords or whatever. So it's like 4 blacksmiths. They get given a challenge of what they have to make, and they're given a load of junk metal, and they have to melt them, whatever it is that they choose to pick into whatever it is they're told to make. So they could be told to make a samurai sword, so they have to go and find the materials, melt the materials down, forge it, and it has different knockout stages as you go through. So things like strength and sharpness and technique and all that kind of thing. But if you've never seen anybody forge stuff before, a blacksmith forging stuff, it's just fascinating to watch. It really is. It's
and within about 30. Within about 30 minutes, you'll be there yelling at the television, "That weld's never going to hold!" Because all of a sudden you've become an expert blacksmith by watching the television. Yeah, it's really, really compellingly watchable.
But the thing is, though, I don't know when it's on and so on. So I only find it when I'm flicking sometimes. So I'll see it and I'll think, "Oh, I'll put a reminder in and watch it." So I don't know what day it's on or what channel it's on.
Thursdays at 9. But also, if you've got catch-up or whatever, it habitually pops up there. And you end up then turning to your wife after there's like, "It will cut," or "It will kill."
Sounds like a medieval version of MacGyver.
It's whoever came up with it is a stone cold genius. It is just weirdly watchable. You end up becoming. I mean, some of the stuff that some of the people. I mean, the varying levels of skill is quite considerable. There are people who think they're the shit and they're not, and there's other people who are just. I mean, there was an earlier episode, so end of season 1 or season 2, where when the finalist presented what he'd done in a week as the historical weapon, what the judges went, "I have no idea how you did this in 5 days."
Yeah,
it's like not the faintest clue, and it's some of it's awesome. So yeah, give it a go. I mean, we're approaching the summer drought for television.
What I will say is if you're going to give it a go, watch the evening slot, because if you watch the daytime slot, it is edited. Right. You've got to watch the evening slot, because if it's swords or whatever, what they tend to do is they tend to bring in a slab of beef or whatever, or half a cow or whatever, to test the cutting power through bone and that kind of thing. Obviously, during the day, that's heavily edited, so you don't see the sword hitting anything, and you don't see it cutting through or whatever. It's only in the evening showings that it's left untampered, so you can actually see swords going through bone and that kind of thing. And when you see what a medieval samurai sword is capable of and the damage it can inflict, it's like, my God.
Can I also? I've just read a review for this Netflix Glow thing. Now, I understand that the actress Alison Brie has a number of dedicated male fans, shall we say. It would appear in the first episode it's her first ever topless scene. So make of that what you will.
Right. Moving on. I haven't seen anything this month because it's beautiful weather and I've been out at car shows all week or weekends, and I've got a bit of a social life now, so I don't tend to sit in the TV flicking through. So there's a lot of things that I've actually missed this month. But if I was going to recommend anything to watch, I would definitely recommend it. If you go to iPlayer and go to Scotland, you can watch Proclaimers. This is a story which is a documentary look by David Tennant into the 30-year career of the Proclaimers. I know there's not that huge a following for them in this country. They're huge elsewhere, but I've got to say they are a band that grow on you, and their back catalogue of stuff is really quite impressive. I don't know if you're a fan, Ed, or not, but certainly some of the best albums they did, like Sunshine of Leith, there's some absolutely cracking tunes on there, and some really, really intelligent songwriting as well. So if you're a fan, then that is on iPlayer. If you go to BBC Scotland, you can do that, and that's about it for me. I've been looking through the listings to see if there's anything worth setting a record series for, and it hasn't been anything for me. And as for streaming services and so on, just haven't had the time. My spare time's been spent outdoors at the minute, which it should be in the summer. You losers that are sitting at home.
Yeah, rub it in, mate.
I just finished watching American Gods, thanks to Ed's recommendation, which I quite enjoyed. Fargo, I'm really enjoying. As Mark just said, I enjoyed Better Call Saul. Thought that was excellent. Just finished. We're just reaching the end of Doctor Who, which I've reasonably enjoyed. It's Peter Capaldi's last season, and he's going out with a bang, which is good. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just finishing, which I've also really enjoyed. I think it's been a really good season for that, actually. This Friday, I think it is, the end of this week, or maybe early next week, we got the new season, our second season of Preacher on Amazon, which I enjoyed season 1, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think, I'm watching Twin Peaks, which is just batshit crazy. Anyone who pretended like they used to watch Twin Peaks back in the early 90s and now has to sit through this season are really being tested. Because if you weren't a real fan and were just faking it, you're not going to make it through, because this is hardcore David Lynch, much more like Fire Walk with Me than the TV series. It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. It makes American Gods seem normal.
So it'll be getting cancelled after season 1 then.
I've no idea I have no idea if it's doing well, but I can't imagine it is. I really can't imagine it's doing very well at all. But they've made 18 episodes. It's basically, I think he's written it and directed it as one big long film, basically. So hopefully it'll have a conclusion, which is more than the original series did. We'll see. But it is. I mean, I don't know where they're going with it at the moment, but it's all over the shop, and it's entertaining, but it's mad as a hatter.
Okay, so that's our picks for TV shows. Sorry I haven't watched any, but, it's been sunny outside. Moving on, we're going to finally wrap up this overtime podcast, as usual, with some Star Wars news. And very brief at that, because the news broke during the week that we're recording this. We obviously record this on a Friday, so I think it was about Tuesday or Wednesday. News broke that Han Solo directors had been sacked. There was only 3 weeks left before they finished filming, Steve, and straight away the rumour was that Ron Howard was going to take over, and that has turned out to be the case come Friday morning.
Yep, been confirmed. Now this is, I've got to say, this is seismic news, because this is, I'm not going to say unprecedented, but almost unprecedented. To sack directors almost at the end of principal photography is virtually unheard of. The only examples I could think of, I know Richard Stanley was sacked quite early in filming production on his version of Iron and Dr. Moreau. And famously, Richard Donner shot Superman 1 and 2 simultaneously and had shot around 70% of Superman 2, but was not called back, was basically sacked and didn't get a chance to come back and finish filming Superman 2. That was finished by Richard Lester. But otherwise, the idea of sacking directors this late in production is just staggering. And it makes you wonder what, I mean, I'm sure there's a really interesting story behind this, but it makes you think, if you had an issue with what they were doing, you would have noticed quite early in production. You just thought, if they weren't happy with what they were doing in terms of maybe the tone, they'd have noticed after the first couple of weeks of shooting. To be 3 months into principal photography and to sack them suggests that there must have been a massive, massive falling out between the directors and Kathleen Kennedy and Lawrence Kasdan, who seem to be calling the shots at Lucasfilm. It's going to be interesting to know what happens now, because under Director Guild rules, you had to have shot at least 51% of a film to get credit. So Ron Howard's either going to do this for no credit, like Tony Gilroy shot. The reshoots on Rogue One was shot by Tony Gilroy and written and shot by Tony Gilroy and not by Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards only shot the Darth Vader sequence, apparently. But because the majority of the film was still shot by Edwards, he gets credit. Now, I'm guessing what happened here is that because Lord and Miller, who are pretty successful filmmakers in their own right. They've done the Lego Movie, which is a massive critical and commercial success. They've done 21 and 22 Jump Street, both of which were very well received critically and very successful commercially, and also Clouded with Chance of Meatballs, which again was critically well received and commercially successful. So they've got a fair bit of clout. They've got a good relationship with Warner Brothers and a good relationship with Sony, who they are currently in the middle of producing an animated Spider-Man film for. I think they said, look, we're doing it our way, or you can sack us. And Kennedy called their bluff. I think people like Gareth Edwards, who don't have the same kind of clout, just said, well, whatever, okay, fine, we'll reshoot and do this and that. They clearly held their ground and said, this is what we set out to do.
It's
interesting.
Don't
like it, stuff you.
It's interesting that their background, again, is comedic film. Or certainly humorous.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the tone you would expect from a Han Solo movie. You'd kind of expect the rogue, the lovable rogue comedy playing between him and Chewie and that kind of thing. You'd think that they would be the perfect fit, and obviously Lucasfilm at one point thought they were the perfect fit. So you've got to think that there has to be something absolutely, like you say, major there for them. They've either like you say, given an ultimatum and the bluff has been called, or they have gone behind Lucasfilm's back and done something that they weren't supposed to do, and tried to stick to their guns and been shown the door. And it just, I think, it points to the just amount of power that Kennedy has in this. Yeah,
I mean, I also think, and Kasdan too, I think, to a degree, because he wrote the script with his son John. I don't understand why, given he wrote the damn thing, and he's a very talented director in his own right, he didn't just make it himself. Because I always thought Lord and Miller were a strange choice, because they are essentially comedic. And whilst you could have a degree of comedy in this and irreverent fun about Han Solo, I don't get the feeling, and I think we talked about this before, that, initially I got the idea that these standalone films meant to be different tonally. So like Edwards was going to make a more gritty war film, and in actual fact what ended up Rogue One being was almost a direct prequel to Star Wars, and they clearly decided to change the tone to be more like Star Wars than to be very, very different. And maybe they changed their mind on this too. They thought, we don't want it to be funny and irreverent, we want it to be more like a serious Star Wars movie. I don't know. If they're going to make the May release date, they haven't got time to fanny around. I mean, what they're going to do, reshoot the entire film again? And that would just be astronomically expensive. So they're going to have to take what they've shot and fix it in post somehow. But this fascinating, what a total cluster basically this has turned into for Lucasfilm.
Interesting stuff. We'll see how that goes on. So that kind of wraps up, again, a feature-length AVForums podcast. We really need to have a word with ourselves about going off on tangents and all the rest of it. But on that bombshell, that is it for this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
I think you would have made a great Muppet.
Mark Hodgkinson.
Nobody tells me nothing.
You're still here, Mark. Impressive. And Ed Selley. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and videos. And of course you can leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. I'm now going to go and watch Hot Fuzz because I've forgotten how great a film it is. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.